online training programs for entrepreneurs who want to be global speakers and online consultants. So this panel is about the gig economy, and just so you know, this is an Uber guy here. That car is going to go off for a raffle later on. Just kidding, just kidding.
Yeah.
But again, we do appreciate you coming here. And first, I'm going to do two things before I do intros for our panelists. The first is just explain what the gig economy is. A few of you came up to me before the panel and asked me, what is the gig economy? So just very briefly, at the core, it's non-traditional employment opportunities. Freelance work, independent contractors, temporary, flexible jobs. So the traditional way of thinking of work is find a 9-to-5 job, full benefits, hopefully find a sustainable career. The gig economy is like, if you're musicians, where's my next gig? So Uber, Airbnb, that's kind of examples. Myself, I have consultants and coaches I hire all around the world, or coach, where they can choose whatever time they want to work. And so it's just a very different world we live in. So I'm going to give a very basic history lesson to kind of give you a context of why we are living in the most unprecedented time in human history. And then I'll do some intros, and we'll just jump in and just share some of these gig economy skill sets that you can learn and apply for your communities. So from a historical standpoint, these are very broad strokes, right? But at the core, we were hunter and gatherers for 165,000 years. And then around 10,000 years ago, there's a place called the Fertile Crescent in the Syria area where we started settling and having agriculture and farming. In the last few thousand years, all the wealth was primarily in the royal families and nobility. Last few hundred years, you had the Carnegies, the Rothschilds, and the Rockefellers. The last few decades, you have these corporations coming up. But then really, it's in the last 20 plus years, when you look at Amazon, Mike is from the Seattle area, but Amazon started in 1994. And so from Amazon to now, which is 20 plus years, the internet we live in now is insane to the point where the online training space is a $107 billion industry. The gig economy, just for US employees, is 1/3 of the population of the US, working employees, have some level of gig capacity. So where we are now in the context of human history is a very, very unique time because you can literally create a job from nothing, create a website, and literally have a gainful employment if you choose to do full-time or part-time. And so this specific panel is really about what are the opportunities in this gig economy and how you can build this awareness and skill set. So that being said, I'm going to do a quick intro relative to our esteemed panelists. To my left, we have Luke Marklin. He's the general manager of Uber, who oversees the central Georgia market based in the Atlanta office. He's responsible for leading the locally based team that is focused on business operations in Atlanta, including supply, logistics, marketing, policy, and communications. And I asked, just to make this fun, I asked after I share their bio to just share with the audience one fun fact about themselves. So, Luke?
Oh, wow, I forgot about that question. I'll go with the safe answer and say that the biggest thing going on in my life right now is just trying to figure out how to get my 2-year-old to eat dinner and not throw food off throughout the house. And that's pretty much an eternal struggle right now. So if anyone has any advice afterwards, I'd love to talk to you after this. So.
His son's name is August.
Okay. All right. Beg and plead. All right. That's the current tactic we're using.
Luke, thank you for joining our panel. We have Mike Kickline. He's the CEO and co-founder of Yesler. It's a global marketing company, agency, and a consultant firm. They have 350 employees in 14 countries, and they have offices in Seattle, Portland, Philadelphia, Toronto, and London. He's based in Seattle, Washington. Mike, what's one fun fact about you?
I'm going to go really off the board. This is something I don't think many people even work for me now. I actually I had a claim to fame years and years and years and years ago. I got to be a guest on the Oprah Winfrey Show.
Oh, wow.
So.
You get a car.
Nice.
I didn't get a car.
Nice. Thank you, Mike. Last, we have Valerie Williams. Valerie Williams is the diversity program manager at Airbnb. Airbnb currently has 150 million users. They have over 3 million lodging listings in 65,000 cities and 191 countries. Airbnb is considered one of the collaborative consumption and sharing companies. And Valerie, what's one fun fact about yourself?
Let's see. I'm going to go with my first Airbnb story, actually. So I stayed in an Airbnb when I first moved to California, and it actually resulted in a fire. So, so I'm surprised that they actually hired me after I, probably cost them a lot in insurance money. Yeah.
Awesome. And I'll just share a fun fact about myself. Like I said, I created different companies throughout the last 17 years as a consultant. I used to work for American Express. And now I have an online coaching program where I teach entrepreneurs how to become global speakers and online consultants. My fun fact is I actually used to be a singer-songwriter, and I've written songs, a few hundred songs. I've gotten placements in film, TV, radio. My claim to fame is I wasn't on Oprah, but I co-wrote the 40th anniversary song for Spaghetti Warehouse. Anyone from Dallas, Texas?
Oh.
So Spaghetti Warehouse is a chain of restaurants based in Dallas, and so I led a national marketing campaign and co-wrote a song that literally went viral. So if you Google Spaghetti Warehouse song, it went viral and it was played from New York to Dubai, and BuzzFeed called it the best song on the internet. And the best summer song on the internet, and AV Club literally said it was the best song online. Like, it was just kind of weird. It's my fun fact. All right, so again, thank you all for coming. We're just going to jump right into this gig economy. And feel free, anyone on the panel, to just jump in. So, how has the gig economy really impacted your life on a day-to-day level, whether from a personal or professional standpoint?
Sure, happy to kick it off. I think that was a really good kind of synopsis of how we've gotten to the gig economy and kind of the fundamental tenets for how the gig economy has kind of played out. And at its core, I think the gig economy is doing it makes goods and services cheaper and more affordable, more available for people. And so for me, we got rid of our second car. That's a pretty provocative thing to do in Atlanta. And we're down to a one-car family. We just did the math, and we were spending hundreds of dollars a month on a car. And that's a lot of Ubers. And it made sense to really drop that. And it's really been a great thing for our bottom line. And frankly, I can use that time now and spend more time at home, which is our more valuable time at home, which I appreciate. And then professionally, I think careers and kind of the gig economy really meet at the intersection of technology, logistics, and people. And it's really one of the most fascinating and fun places to be right now, where we don't really know where it's going to go. So it's been a really awesome industry to be a part of, and really fulfilling.
So I'll speak a little bit about kind of where we sit as an organization. So we actually operate under two brands, and one of our organizations, Project Line, is a consulting and staffing organization. So we actually transact in placing people into roles, right? So most of our customers are large technology companies, but we act in the middle between the buyers of services and the individuals that have a skill set or a talent that we're going to put into place. And the other side of it, our marketing agency, we're a consumer in many ways. A lot of our clients, we do a lot of design work and development work, and it's a creative mindset that has a talent base that often likes more independence. A great example is writers. We use writers to produce a lot of our content, right? A lot of writers are not actually looking to be employed within an organization, or some of them have a very specialized expertise and voice that they'll put into things. And we don't need that specialty all the time, but we need it from time to time. So we're a consumer of people on that side, and have really been at the forefront of this for the last 14 years of working on both sides of this to create opportunities where we can empower people to take interim opportunities or contract roles or part-time opportunities. And more what we're seeing is that has been something that's been a desirable choice for people for any number of reasons. Wanting more flexibility, wanting more freedom, wanting to be able to challenge themselves to do different things. And I think it's a really valuable piece of our offering. And the other side, being able to accommodate that in hiring people directly that gives us an advantage to be able to have on-demand services from time to time that augment spikes in demand where our staff is really maxed out, but I need to deliver additional things in the next week or month, and being able to tap into that on-demand pool of resources that choose to work that way is really valuable for us. On a personal level, when we started the organization, I was working very much in a gig capacity for a long time. You know, and you're in the services business. When we founded the company, I was not only working on the company, but I was also billable. I was working for clients all the time. I also was a full-time single father. And so my ability to stay home, my ability to work from home and pick up my kids and spend the time with them every day was a luxury, and I was really, really happy that I had that opportunity. I was really fortunate that I had those opportunities available to me to be able to play both sides of that and participate not only at a corporate level and doing the work, but being able to have the flexibility and the freedom to be present and stay home and manage my life around that.
Great. So I'll talk a little bit about professionally, working at Airbnb. It's been awesome. I've been there for a couple of years, and as was mentioned, I work in our diversity organization, right? And so how this has really affected kind of what I do. Traditionally, the diversity role is really focused on kind of the workforce, right? How do we make a company more diverse, whether it's from a representation standpoint. And really what I get to do now is, in addition to that, is think about how do we make Airbnb known to all kinds of communities? How do we put that message out of economic empowerment to underserved communities? And so I get a chance to not only work on workforce diversity, but also work with our public policy teams as we go into different markets to say, how do we really get this message out to let people know about the benefits of hosting on Airbnb? How can we spread that word to underrepresented communities? So for me, it's really enriched my role quite a bit to think about the gig economy within Airbnb and really spreading that message to underrepresented communities.
Great. And just a show of hands, how many of you have actually used Uber or the other competitor in this room? Great. And then what about Airbnb? How many people have used Airbnb? Yeah, and when you think about that, I mean, I was doing some research.
Good numbers.
Sorry?
They were good numbers.
Yeah, that makes
How many people took Uber here today? Hey, all right. You guys are all in the raffle for the car.
Yeah, that car back there is a raffle later on. But, I mean, you think about that, right? The vast majority of people in this room raise their hand. When Airbnb started August 2008, not even 10 years, and Uber started in March 2009, 8 years. Yet most of the people in this room raised their hand. Now, for those of you who did not, like Airbnb essentially is if, let's say I have an extra room or an apartment or a home, I can just rent that out. I can look at things online, kind of like eBay does, and see the users see the people that rent out the homes and of past reviews and know if this person is going to be like a safe person, cool or whatnot. But it's just a way to find more income. And we were talking about this before the panel, and I was doing some research where 69% of our Americans have less than $1,000 in savings. And yet Valerie was saying, well, let's say the average person makes $6,000 from passive income on Airbnb. So it's just these opportunities that we have. Another question I have for all of you here is, how many of you are entrepreneurs, have their own business? And then how many of you are full-time employees? Awesome. So again, in this gig economy, it doesn't have to be this way or that way. It can be a blend of both. And as Mike was saying, you know, he chose to be a person that had his flexibility of being a father, but he built out his own company. So just know that it's not a choice between I gotta do it this way and get a full-time job or the gig economy. It's kind of a blend of both. So the next question, we've already talked about a little bit, but like, what do you think are some of the advantages or disadvantages? I mean, you know, personally, like Luke, I actually got rid of my car too last December. And I said, you know what, I live in Los Angeles, I have a home-based office in Beverly Hills, and I'm gonna try an Uber life for a year. And it's been great in that, like, I can get a lot more work done. There's no stress about parking. And those of you who've been to Los Angeles, the traffic is even worse than Atlanta. And so the benefits for me have been astronomical. So I'm just curious if anyone has any additional things to share about the advantages or disadvantages of this gig economy.
And I'll focus on the other side of the economy, the driver side, or the kind of the labor side of it. And I think there's two big advantages. One is, in Atlanta, we've created tens of thousands of income earning opportunities. In the United States, it's hundreds of thousands, and worldwide, it's millions. And that happened within the last 8 years. And so we've been able to create these, and these opportunities are unique. They're flexible. You can turn the app on at 24 hours a day whenever it works, and you can do it to fit your lifestyle. And so that's a pretty unique proposition that now millions of people have access to that they didn't have before, which is great. And it also is something that provides almost weekly, if not daily, cash, which is really important to the invisible class. The other thing is for people who are not going to use it as a permanent job, but are going to are looking for a job. Now you have this buffer. You have a bridge opportunity that can fill gaps while you're looking. And I've talked to countless drivers who are in the process of going back to school or improving their education or looking for a new opportunity or between jobs. And that's where Uber really helped them, is it wasn't a crisis now that they were between jobs, but it was an opportunity for them to pivot and go move on to something else. And then finally, there's cities that don't have great transit, don't have great ways to get people who are in lower income areas to jobs. And now they have that ability. With the touch of a button, they can have a ride at their door. So like for job seekers and for people who are looking for employment, the economy is a big deal, and it's helped a lot of people.
I'll add, just because it's very similar, our models are similar. As was mentioned, the average host in the United States makes $6,000 annually just to put up a room or to put their listing up for a weekend when they're away, when it's just sitting idle anyway. So, we love that we're providing this economic opportunity for people. And the other thing, the added benefit for us is that we're often empowering people to list in communities that don't have hotels, that people wouldn't necessarily visit, right? And so when you think about the overall economic impact, the jobs that we're, fueling when people are going to these other communities, there's literally, we just did an we have an economic empowerment agenda where we just released a report where in these communities in the United States alone, there's over 700,000 jobs that we're helping, right? We're contributing to, and that was last year, and this year it'll be over 1 million jobs, right? So as we're allowing people, giving people the platform to put their homes up, we're also stimulating local communities that maybe people would not necessarily have gone traditionally in tourist areas. So we're really, really excited about the overall economic opportunity that provides for people in the U.S. and around the world.
I think from our perspective, we talked a lot about this in kind of our prep. I'm at a different level of the gig economy, so to speak, and a lot of the people that we work with are looking to make this into more of a lifestyle or career as a primary source of income. And there are challenges to that. There are challenges to that in how the gig economy is evolving. And I think the idea that there's a lot of fantastic ideas around what it can be and how it can empower people. But there's a reality of how you're going to actually make those things happen that still exists to a large degree. And we believe very strongly that that's the foundation for that, first and foremost, is education. It's necessary at so many levels to be able to elevate people into the opportunities to actually use the gig economy as a full-time source of income. I think that's what's really amazing about the work that the Hope Foundation is doing and Operation. I think they're addressing that very directly to try and provide the level of education necessary to empower people to understand what they can do either in a traditional economic role, like getting a great job or starting a business, or to be a participant in that economy. So when I think about how that affects us, there are kind of three levels of need to participate in the gig economy, so to speak. We talked about the need for an asset. There's a need for ability, and there's a need for access, right? So from an asset, I put an education as an asset, right? In my world, we deal with a lot of big companies. Your education is often the asset you bring to the table. In Valerie's world, it's a physical property is the asset that you can monetize to a certain degree. In Luke's world, it's a vehicle, right? You have an asset that you're bringing that you can do something with in this economy, and then you have an ability that you can bring to the table to elevate your earning potential in that. But in all of these fields, whether it's putting somebody into a marketing assignment with a Fortune 500 company, whether it's supplementing your income with your vehicle, whether it's renting out a room or a home, there has to be some level of access. You can have these things, but you need to have access to the buyers. Those buyers need to have access to you. And that's one of the fundamental challenges I think technology is doing a fantastic role to address. They're creating this marketplace that's enabling the gig economy to take place, right? So that's really foundational to empowering people to have means to be more successful. The barrier, I think, that needs to be addressed ultimately in the world that I'm part of is being able to empower people to make that jump with education, to make if they want to have careers and they want to be independent, there's a level of knowledge you have to be able to play in that space, right? I think that one of the, we talked a bit about traditional jobs versus gig economy jobs. The idea that you can learn things and then go put them and monetize them is kind of skipping a step, right? You still need to understand how you're going to utilize those skills in a working environment. There's things we all learn from our everyday jobs. We learn how to engage with people. We learn how to resolve conflicts. We get feedback as to whether they're doing a good job or a bad job. And if you're in a vacuum and you're in isolation and you don't get that feedback and you don't get that mentoring, you get that development, you're at a bit of a disadvantage and just, I learned these skills and now I'm going to go put them to work in the working world. So I think that from a societal level, there's a lot of work to be done to continue to provide those means for people to not only obtain those skills, but to use them the right way to empower themselves to be active participants and develop careers in the gig economy. I think that's a fantastic opportunity we have in front of us.
Thanks. Let's dive a little deeper. Last year, I was fortunate enough to speak at the Center for Civil and Human Rights. If anyone has a chance to go there, it's a phenomenal place to go. And as I was speaking there on the second floor atrium, I was holding on my hand, and someone took a picture of me holding on my hand, but on the ground floor, there was a mural of someone holding their hand too, and it said justice. And as Dr. King once said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And so I'm curious, like from a gig economy, do these opportunities help the most underserved? Outside of business, I work a lot with the homeless community in Los Angeles, where I created the only homeless youth program at the largest shelter in LA, where we teach homeless teens career life skills. So I'm curious, for the panelists, do you feel that this gig economy actually helps the most vulnerable, the most underserved communities in the country and in the world?
I do. I mean, as I mentioned, I think the world that I interact with on the gig economy level is often a step beyond that. But I see the paths that exist to empower people to rise out of poverty and empower them to do more. There's a lot of programs. So in Seattle, it's a very tech-centric community. We have Amazon, we have Microsoft, we have a massive tech community with campuses with Google and Facebook as well, and a number of others. And so people talk a lot about learning how to code, right? Learn how to participate. And there's some really fantastic programs that have done exactly that, to take people and start from ground zero and not only teach them the coding skills and the ability to develop apps and the ability to contribute within the tech economy, but to give them those tools and skills and capabilities and enable them to be contributors in the gig economy. And I don't think that that was either a possibility a decade ago, nor was it accepted. And I think that from my standpoint, while we may not be at the front lines yet of being able to empower people directly, I think that establishing the mindset that this is a fantastic option, it changes how employers view things, it changes how people view their capabilities and their opportunities, and it sets a foundation for that to be more and more widely accepted and open the doors for those opportunities to continue to develop.
Good.
Yeah, I just have an example. It was really timely that I actually ran across this organization. I think the short answer is yes, it can. I think it can actually empower the invisible class, or the most impoverished communities. The example I'll use is an organization called Sama Source, and Sama in Handskirt means equal. And this organization is a nonprofit, really more of a social entrepreneurship that basically works with, they revolutionize the way they think about philanthropic aid. So instead of just giving someone money or giving someone resources, what they're doing is introducing the gig economy to underserved communities. And they have since I think 2008 really worked with communities in Haiti and Uruguay and other places to match the opportunities that are here in the United States in the gig economy to these communities, and also teach them the skills of how to actually be eligible for those jobs, right? And so instead of just giving a fish, you teach them how to fish, right? And I think if we have more organizations like that, the gig economy absolutely can help communities that don't know about those opportunities, to Mike's point about the access. Our platforms are online platforms, but that's only 15% of the gig economy that are on these online platforms that people can access. But what organizations can exist or can we empower to actually make that bridge actually happen on a real level? So I do think it can happen, and I was just inspired to hear about that organization particularly that's actually doing it.
And I think previous to what we talked about and what we just said, if the gig economy can produce jobs and a bridge opportunity for job seekers, that's going to be the invisible class is going to be the one has probably the most to gain from it, which is pretty exciting. And I think the three things that come to mind. One, there's a lot more opportunities now. Two, the barriers to entry to these opportunities are less. And then three, companies are really trying, because they're growing so fast, we need to continue to find ways to open up these opportunities for more and more people. We want to do it because it's in our heart, but we also need to do it because of the growth we're seeing. And so we know that a huge issue for the invisible class is, as we mentioned, savings, immediate liquidity. And so we created an instant pay product where drivers can cash out that day. If they need cash that day, you can drive and you can get cash that day. We also knew that access to a vehicle is an issue, and so we created, at our scale now, we created a vehicle solutions program where we can actually do auto leasing ourselves at below market rates, and that helps people who didn't have credit actually get in a vehicle and own their own car. And so we are a company that is growing and wants to make sure that the invisible class is part of that growth. And there's a lot of other great companies out there like us who are going to continue to invest in making sure that access is very available.
Great. We're going to actually have one last question and then open it up for Q&A. We started a bit late. So my last question is this. Stories are 22 times more memorable than facts. And so what specific story do you have? Let's say in my case, I just started this new gifted professional speaker program where I teach entrepreneurs how to become speakers. And one of my clients, she's a 20-year-old woman from a small town in Sweden, and she's been able to create a coaching program where she teaches millennials how to network better to get better jobs. Right, so is there one specific story in your life and your line of work that you can kind of just like really encapsulate this whole gig economy? This is the last question I'll ask, and then we'll open it up for any questions from the audience.
I got lots of stories. How long do we want to be?
Someone that's been impacted, just, you know.
Yeah, I just talked to a driver who was living, she was in education, she was working part-time, she was on the West Coast, her cost of living was really high, her family was back here. Just through a variety of circumstances, she ended up in this role, and she was stuck there for the better part of 10 years. And not that that's a bad place to be, but her situation was such where she was living essentially paycheck to paycheck, very far away from her family, and she just didn't have a very good way to solve that problem. And until she learned about Uber, and she decided to take kind of a bet and pack up and drive back to Atlanta with no job, because she knew that now that she didn't have to have a job when she got here, because if the worst case scenario, she could drive. And she was actually kind of looking forward to it, learn the city, learn more about this community that she hadn't been a part of in a while. So she moved back, she didn't have a job, and she's been Ubering, and that's allowed her to actually, you know, not immediately find the most available job, but actually she's going back to school, and she's kind of getting a graduate degree so she can actually position herself to jump into a better place in the market. She is able to go on vacation now and like go visit her family, not just in Georgia, but other places. And like, she was just really in a tough spot where she was stuck. And now, you know, the story is not over, but the path, the doors have been opened. And I think that's, you know, that's a good microcosm for, you know, hundreds of thousands of other people who are starting to participate in the gig economy.
I think a lot about the impact that we've been able to have over the years on working moms. The other day, one of our recruiters in HR was like, "Hey, Mike, did you realize that we now have 100 more women working at our company than men?" I'm like, I knew we had a higher ratio of women. It's pretty amazing. And a lot of the stories we've had over the last decade has been, you know, on a macro level, really about allowing more freedom. So many of the women that work at our company are moms, and they have flexibility, and they have the ability to spend time at home and and go to family activities and set their schedule the way that they want to, and we encourage that. I've always kind of had the philosophy that you know, treat people like adults and they typically respond. You know, allow people to set their schedule, do the work. You know, just get the work done. You know what? If you can do it in 10 hours, good for you. Like, that's fantastic. We can find more stuff, but. You know, if you want to value people based on the hours they put in, that's exactly what I can fill time. Like, that's not hard, right? What I'd rather have is people that are accomplishing things and doing things. And when you send that message and you value that, I think there's a really empowering aspect to that. And for us, like I said, from a work standpoint, in fact, a big part of our company grew up around what I always called the Microsoft moms. We worked within, you know, tech companies and women that had left the traditional job to raise a family, but found they still wanted to be engaged and do things. They just didn't want to go back in the machine. They didn't want to do that anymore. They wanted the flexibility and the freedom to set their schedules and make time for the things that were important to them. And I think that what I've seen that is really encouraging is that is now more of an expectation, which is a really healthy thing. I think that has started to filter to a lot of places as more of an expectation that we want balance in our lives and we want flexibility. We want the ability to spend time with the people we care about and develop the relationships. And as the gig economy evolves, I think that becomes more and more prevalent.
I have one quick story. We at Airbnb, we literally exist for our hosts. And so we have a mobilization team that regularly talks to our hosts, make sure that they're getting feedback to us, and we're, pushing out information to them and testing ideas. And one host comes to mind, a woman in her 70s in New York who was going to lose her home that she'd been in for 40 years, right? She was retired, but couldn't, pay her mortgage. And so we worked with her to list on Airbnb. And of course, she was able to stay in her home and, she was able to really pay her mortgage through that. But the cool thing that I love about her story is that, she lived alone, and, Airbnb provided her a way to interact with people on a regular basis, right? She had purpose. She found purpose in actually being a host and welcoming people in her home. And she's one of our hosts that we talk to regularly. And we see that a lot for people in the elderly community that are living at home alone and they want to find something to do. And our platform allows them to meet new people from around the world. So I always think about her as an option or as an example of the beauty of what can come out of the gig economy.
That's great. Yeah. So we have about 10 minutes left, so we'll open it up for questions from the audience.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
Do we have a microphone for...
Is it me?
Wow, that's why you're just up.
It is now.
Hi, my name is Tanya, and I had a question. I think you answered some of it, but with 73 million... Oh, okay. With 73 million millennials coming in the workplace, do you think that the gig economy will be competing with traditional work? Coming from an HR standpoint, I see some of the attributes, flexibility, being able to work, variety, different things of that nature. Have you guys experienced some of that? Because a lot of the millennials are coming out and they don't want that traditional stuff that we want, if you will.
Yeah, we definitely have.
They don't want security. So have you guys experienced any of that? Especially
Yeah, we definitely have. We see that quite a bit we see that quite a bit in how people, like I said, want to work, want to be hired, the flexibility they want. I mean, there's a far greater emphasis in millennials on wanting to have life before work, right? And we can make fun of that, and you can knock it, and you can do it. They're not wrong, right? I mean, who's wrong in that equation of wanting to have your life come before your work? I mean, maybe they're the ones that have their priorities in order. I mean, I'm a Gen Xer, and I remember when everybody calls us the slacker generation, right? You guys are never going to amount to anything. You guys all suck. You don't know how to work.
The baby boomers are ridiculous, man.
Yeah, they're harsh critics. But you know what? They created some of the biggest companies in the world, right? And I think the millennials are kind of in this space where there's a little bit of that, what is this all about? But there's a value to that perspective they're bringing that is making all of us think about how you need to adjust what your expectation is of work.
Yeah, my guess is that the pressure will be on companies because millennials will have a lot more flexibility and try to not find a job, but the perfect job. And at Uber and at previous employers, the adage of the company person kind of moving around from city to city, I think is starting to go away. And it's because they have alternatives that they can turn to while they're trying to find another job. So I think companies that are thinking of HR previously are going to, there's probably going to be, they're probably going to have some disadvantages in that world.
Yeah, at the same time, though, I'd say just quickly, my CEO is like teetering the line of millennial and Gen X, right? Like he's like right there. And so what we found because of that, because we have young leadership, is that a lot of what people are looking for in flexibility, is really woven into our culture. And I'd say a lot, and the tech industry is a good example of companies that are emerging that try to incorporate a lot of what millennials are looking for coming out within the company culture. So I'd say it probably will be a balance between allowing more people to participate in the gig economy independently of being an employee, and then also really offering benefits that employees are looking for that sometimes you can get in the gig economy.
Yeah, and here's the thing about the millennial population. I mean, at the core, they want to be inspired with a sense of purpose. They've done research on this where, like, Daniel Pink talks about how if you want to motivate people, it's about autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And so as long as employers, you're mindful that it's not just about the paycheck and the 401k plans and the vacations, it's about, well, what inspires them? What's their purpose? And if you can dive deep into that based on research, you will not only have a great employee that's a millennial, you'll have a millennial that's really inspired and will be your like evangelist for your company. Back there? Yeah.
Hi, my name is Glenda Bridgeforth Hodges, and my question is, what kind of financial services would be helpful for those in the gig economy? One of the reasons that I ask is that I'm on the board of directors of a company, Green Dot Corporation, who partners with Uber to provide checking accounts and the instant pay product so that people can cash out and receive their money on the same day that they do the driving. And so one of the things that we clearly are looking for are other opportunities where we can provide financial services, create financial services for those who are in the gig economy. So, you know, do you have any additional suggestions?
Yeah, I think.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'll let these guys. You've already stolen my thunder, so please.
Well, you had a great point about the cash out, but there's a really I read a really interesting stat that's I think 70% of freelancers experience difficulty getting paid. Right? You know. Yes. I mean, that's a challenge. You know. I mean, you talk to any corporation, and one of the biggest metrics you look at is cash flow, and you know, it's hard enough at a business level when you know you have a line of credit and you have money in the bank and you have the ability to carry yourself. It's far more difficult at an individual level to have access to that capital to bridge the gap, right? So I think that's a critical component. The other is the acceptance level. So let's say you're making a really good living independently and you want to buy a house and you don't have a W-2. You are potentially penalized for that, right? Because you have to prove your income. Now, as we saw in 2008, like it's pretty necessary to be able to prove your income or else some pretty bad things are going to happen in the long run. However, there are times where your inability to have an established income structure means you may pay a quarter point or a half point higher on your mortgage, right? There's a penalty to that. I think the acceptance at a financial instrument level to acknowledge that this is not only a legitimate way for people to provide income, but that there is stability and reality behind that is something that still is in flux, right? We don't quite have the mechanisms in place to empower people financially at the level they do if they have a traditional job.
So we have one more question here, gentlemen.
Mm-hmm.
Good morning. My name is Scotty Hendricks. I want to kind of piggyback on the last question. A lot of the gig employees, they don't have access to the traditional financial security instruments that come with a full-time job, like a 401k or disability insurance or life insurance. And I know it would probably be cost prohibitive, and plus there's certain things that you can't do with the independent contractor as you can with a W-2 employee. But from your standpoint, what are you guys doing to bring that education to your gig employees about the instruments that they can utilize, like an IRA or their own type of coverage? How are you getting that message to them, and how's it being received?
Here's the thing. There's a level of education and resource, meaning like I have various independent contractors that I've hired for my company, and like the education is there are resources out there for financial planners, insurance agents and whatnot. It's just letting them know that it's there, and then the resource is that they know it's there, because a lot of times it's about education, not just the resources. The resources are all there. Just like if we wanted to solve the hunger problem, we have enough food to solve the hunger problem. So the resource is there, it's just the education part and the leadership. So the other thing I want to mention is that when you have things like PayPal, Venmo, and you can create your own Stripe account on a website you create for yourself. So there's a much more expedited fashion now to get income, where though the traditional route of a full-time employee where I worked at American Express and I have a 401k, those options are still there for independent contractors. They need, I'll bet, a little bit more of a clear structure and guidance, but it's definitely there. So I want to be clear on that point, where the resources there, the education might be lacking, but that goes back to doing research online, which literally you can just Google, like a company like TriNet has all these various HR type things, where in the past it was just like a big headache, and now that's allowed independent contractors or self-employed individuals to have that resource.
I definitely agree that the resources are there, but to me the biggest difficulty is getting an independent contractor to, to know that they can have a solo 401k, or that they can have a SEP IRA or a simple IRA, so I wonder if you guys are actually getting that message out to them, or are you just depending on them to find out that on their own?
Yeah, I mean, the manifestation of everything that you both talked about is for us, like come tax season, we partner with H&R Block, and it's a national partnership, and we try to get as many H&R Block reps in locale, in cities that we operate in, and try to provide a forum where they can interact with drivers and try to drive as much traffic to them as possible. We'll have big info sessions and then breakout sessions after that. So we're not just advertising it, we're trying to, with our scale, kind of standardize the rates. We're trying to take some of the best, the frequently asked questions and just get those out there already, and try to make these resources as readily as possible. It's one example. There's definitely more, but you're right. Like, we have skin in the game, right? Like, we care about it. We want people to succeed, but also if people are having these issues, they're not going to be able to participate in the gig economy for much longer. So it's a win-win on both ends, and certainly that's very top of mind for us.
For just quickly for Airbnb, one example, we have over the last couple of years launched what's called home sharing clubs, and what that does is allow hosts and communities to come together to talk about struggles they may be having, right? And as a resource, we do provide different resources to those home sharing clubs, whether it's around trying to find a co-host for you if you need help with actually hosting, and providing financial literacy during those meetings when the clubs come together. So we definitely listen to the clubs and listen to kind of what they need, and a lot of the clubs do actually ask about financial literacy.
Great. Is it time's up? One more question? Okay. One last question.
So, Natasha Davis from here in Atlanta.
Thank you. Great information. So I have a question for each of you. I am the gig economy. I've been in the gig economy for 13 years. Here's one of the challenges that are faced. As a consultant, companies want you to do what? Get results and manage time. I believe you said your name is Mike?
Yes.
Majority of your team is what's called, or your organization is what's called a ROW organization, results-oriented work environment, which is what basically you said. So to all of the panelists, how are you communicating to your team how to be an effective ROW organization? Because as a gig economy, you have to function as a results-oriented work environment. If you don't produce results, you don't get paid.
Well, for Airbnb, people that host on Airbnb, it's actually critical that you perform well in your home. Our entire platform is based on reviews. So every time you stay in a listing, a host reviews a guest, and the guest reviews the host. And our platform is completely built on trust. So if you don't have good reviews on the system, you are suspended. Like, we're not going to allow poor quality to exist on our platform because it's a reflection of us. And so we work with hosts to try to help them understand, how to be a good host, how to become a super host, how to be really effective during trips when they have people there. So we work one-on-one with them to try to figure out what does success mean. We define that for them, but it's critical for our platform. Our entire platform is built on trust.
Yeah, obviously, we're going to have a different approach. Airbnb and Uber are going to have a different approach than more of the agency, right? Because, the way we're going to have to have results or try to standardize results and quality is through technology. We don't have the ability to have one-on-ones with every driver for us, right, and to talk through. So we have to embrace technology, and I think it'll be interesting to see how our technology is the driver rating, and feedback systems. We actually have technology that can provide feedback on how you're driving based on how fast you're going, things like that. So we're trying to create more and more technology that helps understand the experience and then provide not only sticks but also carrots to people who are doing great to allow them to have better opportunities to earn and better experiences with Uber. And so I guess it'll be interesting to see how companies on the more local level are embracing technology to do the same thing or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in our world, it's very personal, right? I mean, communication is kind of the key to that, and I don't know why I'm in client services sometimes. It's a really brutal business, It's just there's what people tell you and there's what they're thinking. There's the disconnect between those, and so for us, a lot of what we look at is how do we facilitate the best level of communication and get the right levels of commitment and expectations out of the gate. I always say that by nature, I think people tend to be too assumptive. We assume things a lot. We assume somebody knows what we're talking about. We assume somebody knows where we're going with something. And sometimes you really need to go a little deeper to make sure that you're on the same page, right? Or else you set yourself up for failure. And especially in a consultative environment, I think you will often have buyers that haven't adequately thought out what they want to get out of this engagement, right? That in itself can be a challenge trying to get to that. People leave things purposely vague because they don't quite know what they want, and so you're left to fill in the gap and hope that it's right. These are all really big challenges, so what we try to do is a couple things. One is always facilitate the communication, ask the extra questions, make sure that everybody's on the same page. The other thing that we really try to do is provide more experiential information to people that are engaging with particular clients, for example. If I know this client or I kind of know their MO, I know what they're about, I can give some guidance to the people that are going in so that they know how to avoid problems in the future or how to have the right communication style. So for us on a smaller scale, what we try to do is empower the individual consultants we work with as much information as possible based on what we've learned in past engagements and not just expect them to have to figure it out on their own. It's an investment. The more work you put in up front minimizes all of the stuff you're going to have to deal with later, right? So advanced prep on that is a big part of what we try to do.
Great. Thank you so much, our panelists. Thank you, Luke, Mike, and Valerie, for your great knowledge. Thank you so much for coming to our panel.
Thank you.
And especially thank Hope Global Forum for allowing us to have this stage for you all. We'll be here for a few more minutes before lunchtime. Thank you so much.
Thank you.